Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of NRBP's Regional Economic Outlook for 2023. I'm delighted to welcome you all today. NRBP is connecting business for a greater Newark. We connect, inform, advocate, and engage our members to revitalize the city of Newark. We're committed to providing access to information such as we're doing today and to helping you make important connections. We hold this program annually, and until the pandemic, the program took place in person on one morning with an economic forecast and a single panel. Beginning in 2020, we found that the program lent itself well to the virtual environment, and so we capitalized on that by giving little reports over 2 days. This year's focus continues to be on our overall efforts to include equity as a lens in every program that we held. Yesterday, we heard about Newark's land bank and how it is providing opportunities for minority developers and creating ways for first-time buyers to own their home. Also, we heard about residential, commercial, and economic development projects that have come to Newark recently and how they're boosting the economy. We also heard about Choose New Jersey's successful efforts to bring domestic and international businesses, with more companies coming from New York than in the past. I think partly because there are more people that just don't want to travel into the city. And then all of these are contributing to the economic vitality of Newark, as well as the rising cost of rent in towns like Jersey City and Hoboken. Newark is becoming more attractive, and that's showing up in one of the projects. The Shack Tower is already renting. That's the project on the Carter Highway and Market Street. Today, in particular, I'll highlight that Dr. Rodgers will speak about social determinants of health and health equity issues that have been exacerbated during COVID and have had an impact on the economy. We heard the economic report yesterday, and it wasn't all bad news. We'll be hearing about workforce today, and for those of you that were able to attend both days, you can see what your thoughts are on how the two reports mesh together or don't. Logistics. The audience will be off camera and muted for the duration of the program. We have a packed agenda and will not be taking audience questions live. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A, and speakers from the completed panel will respond. If you don't get your question answered during the program, we'll forward it to the respective speaker and have them get back to you. I'll be transitioning between all speakers and topics. We appreciate all the speakers' cooperation in helping to keep us on schedule. Please see the chat for the overall program with titles and organizations of the speakers. Now I'll turn to our sponsor recognition. The sponsor of the Real Estate Economics and Development Series is TD Bank. More about them in a moment. Breakfast sponsors are Choose New Jersey, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey, Invest Newark, Montclair State University, NJDOL, PSEG, and Structure Tone. Thanks to our media sponsor, NJ Advanced Media. If you're interested in sponsoring a future program, please let us know. It's a great way to get your name out. It's now my pleasure to introduce Dan Gallagher, Senior Relationships Manager for TD Bank. Please welcome Dan to provide brief comments.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everyone. As stated, my name is Dan Gallagher. I'm a Senior Relationship Manager at the bank, covering primarily the Union and East Essex region. To that, I really want to thank NRBP for putting together this year's Economic Outlook Symposium. We're all looking forward to a great program. It was the first day one was very informative, and I can honestly say I'm interested to see how the impacts in climate change, over the next couple of years will not even impact the economics, but also our region. I'm sure most, if not all, you know about TD Bank, America's most convenient bank, but I want to share some local highlights. Just in New Jersey alone, we have $59 billion in deposits. That makes us number 2 in the state. We have 226 stores and about 7,500 employees. But we're most proud of our community involvement, which over the past year included over $3 billion in grants, as well as over 9,000 employee volunteer hours. Lastly, TD is recognized as a leader in diversity and inclusion and is a recipient of a long list of accolades, some of which are. Over the past 13 years, we received the top score from the Human Rights Campaign Corporate Equality Index. For the past 3 years, we've been recognized as Forbes Best Employers for Diversity list. And for the past 6 years, we've been on the list on the Bloomberg Financial Services Gender Equality Index. All of this is just a way to show that we're committed to the communities that we serve, and we're happy to help you in business in any way that you can. Once again, I want to say thank you, and I hope you enjoy this program.
Thank you, Dan. We appreciate TD Bank's support through the year. Now it's my pleasure to start the program, and our first speaker is Lesley Hirsch, who is Assistant Commissioner, Office of Research and Innovation, and she is joined by Nicola. Nicole is, excuse me, Nicole, please add your title. I neglected to note it here. It's my pleasure to turn the program over to Lesley and Nicole will be the primary presenter. Lesley.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you very much for having us here to share data that we produce out of the New Jersey Department of Labor. I'm really proud to present to you our newest addition to our staff, the Director of Economic and Demographic Research, Nicola. Take it over, Nicole.
Thank you, Lesley, and good morning, everyone. I hope you can see my screen. I'm going to do F5. So,
yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. There we go. So we put together, Lesley and I put together this presentation to tell you about the economic conditions of 5 counties: Essex, Bergen, Morris, Somerset, and Union. And we hope that we will tell you about the makeup of employment. And if you have any questions or concerns, just let us know and we can talk further beyond today's presentation. Let's start with the overview of the economy. Currently, the labor market is doing very, very well. And that's what's keeping the economies afloat. A couple of things happen. Wage growth has been very stable. And the reason being is, one is the households have a healthy balance sheet overall. And another thing that happened that was unusual is at the outset of the pandemic, the US federal government allocated $5 trillion for businesses, government, and people. Unprecedented. People were making more than what they would make under their W-2 or 1099. It was very, very unusual. So at this point, barring what is going to come, at this point, the labor market is very, very strong. The economic risks, however, are inflation and the Federal Reserve reaction to the current inflation rate, which is stubbornly high and continues to be above 8%. So what the Federal Reserves would like it to be around 2%, which is a nice wish at this point. And in order for them to get it there, they have to put some economic constraints in terms of interest rates to stifle business and consumer spending. That's the hope of what the Federal Reserve is willing or want to achieve, which means we might encounter some type of recession, whether it's mild or we'll have a hard landing. We're not sure yet, but many economists expect some type of a recession next year. The current environment impacts low-income individuals. Inflation is important because it impacts the cost of living. So low-income individuals tend to live paycheck to paycheck. So any change in food or gas prices impacts them heavily. So this environment is not conducive to low-income individual, but middle class and upper incomes, they're doing okay in today's economy, and we see that in the labor market. We don't know, however, if the labor market will continue to be robust as the Federal Reserve push interest rates higher. Now, what we created here for you is we want to show you the employment number in those 5 counties: Essex, Bergen, Morris, Somerset, and Union. And the orange-yellow line shows you the boundaries we select. We have 3 numbers. The one in the middle shows us 1.1 million individuals who live and work in these counties. The one on the left, the 687,000, it shows people who come into these counties to work in there, but they don't live there. The number on the right, the over 726,000, it shows us the people who live in these counties but work elsewhere. Could be around these counties, it could be New York City, for example. So we see that the Essex, Bergen, Morris, Somerset, and Union have around 1.8 million employees. Either they work and live there or live and work elsewhere, which in terms of the impact on the state's economy, these counties provide over 40% of the labor force. So it's a significant impact on the state's economy. Another thing we wanted to show you is the makeup of the employment and the sectors. A third of employment is concentrated in healthcare and social assistance. Government, and government is because we also have local government in these numbers, and retail trade. So a third of that in these three sectors. The rest of what we see here is very similar to the state's makeup. Couple of notable differences where these counties outperform the states is in professional and technical services, which is right here, 9.1%, 1% above the states. And the management of companies also, they outperform the state. This just tells us that there's a little bit more specialized skills in this region compared to the state. The next one we highlight for you here is top 20 employers in terms of job ads. And what we find is it's heavily, the theme in this chart is concentrated by health, Atlantic Health, RWJ, Hackensack. And we have a few pharmaceutical companies like Merck, but it's heavily concentrated in health. We have also other ones like Verizon, Rutgers, Prudential, but healthcare seems to be strong in these counties, which is similar to what we see here, that healthcare is number one in terms of employment. The next chart we have for you is the top 20 occupations where, top 20 occupations where we have a hybrid between high-paying jobs like the software developers applications and between low-paying jobs like secretaries and administrative assistants. Just to give you an average, the state's average income is around $67,000. And some of these jobs pay above that, like registered nurses, software developers, medical and health services managers, marketing managers, and then other ones pay below that, like retail salesperson, customer service representatives, and fast food and counter workers. So there's a hybrid between low and high income jobs. In terms of top skills, what we find interesting in terms of occupational, which is on the left side, the occupational skills, we see two themes: soft skills and technical skills in terms of management of project management and budgeting. I think if we were in person and I had to ask which skills you look at or you look for, I would think that management in terms of projects and people and soft skills are very, very important. We see that in surveys as well, because companies want their labor force to be independent as well as able to work in a team environment and have good skills to interact with others. On the other side, on the right side, we have the technical skills. Here we look at more advanced skills in terms of technology. Excel, interestingly, comes number one, which it's interestingly important software because it provides different services. Like you could do financial modeling, you could do regression, you could do data analysis, up to 1 million observations. So we can see why Excel is a very important software for businesses. We also see PowerPoint and Word, which indicates that companies care about presentational skills as well as writing skills. We have different softwares and programming languages like SQL, which allows you to manipulate data, billions and billions of observations, in contrast to Excel, which is limited to 1 million observation. Then we have SAP, which is like business operation software. Python, similar to SQL, manipulating and creating visualizations for data. Java and JavaScript are interesting there to do different type of website and how you want to present your website. The difference is for JavaScript, you have to write everything for the website and the content and how it looks on HTML and CSS. And how you present it to the public. And then the Java, you have to compile all of it together to create the content on devices and browser. Salesforce is more like customer relationship management, similar to Oracle, they're cloud database companies. Lastly, we wanted to mention to you about what happened during COVID and what we see right now. So just to explain the chart, on the left side, we have the sectors that we highlight, like education, health, retail, trade, professional businesses. And on the blue line from February to April 2020, where we show the employment loss due to COVID. During COVID, New Jersey lost over 700,000 jobs in a matter of 2 to 3 months. Really, it was like quick, we lost. Everybody went home thinking, I'm gonna be home a few weeks, but we ended up being home much longer. But with technology and getting money from the federal government and being able to order everything with a click of a button, we were able to regain the jobs fairly quickly. So this is a blue line on the left side. When we go to the right side, where we see the green, May 2020 to March 2022, and the reason we don't go up to August, which is the state data we have, is because we're using a survey that goes only up to 2022, March 2022, and it's surveyed by counties, which allows us to focus on the 5 counties, Essex, Bergen, Morris, Somerset, and Union. What we see that we have been regaining jobs, and if I look at the state level, the August, a lot of them we actually are regaining and a little bit above. The one notable difference that I would want to point to you is government. Government has lost around 10% of its labor force, and that's due to COVID, due to child and elderly care. That could be that tight labor market. I can find a job and make more money, but it hasn't been recovering at the same rate as other industries. Finance, it could be just, if it shows a negative on both sides, it could be just fintech. It could be that this region, it has some financial activity, but it's on the smaller scale. And we do see on the state level, however, that finance regained all of the job and added 6,600 jobs in addition to where we were during this period. I want to conclude my remarks by providing our contact information. We have data on wages, occupations, industries. We provide data on for different reasons, like people want to expand their business or get a grant or open a new facility. We help them. We have wonderful analysts who help us gather like this presentations and other work, and we present it to the public to help you make evidence-based decisions. Thank you. Lesley, I don't know if you want to add anything. You're more than welcome. I know she's much talented than me, so.
Thank you. No, you did an excellent job. Thank you very much, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you both. This was really very clear and easy to absorb the information. Nicole, just one note on that final slide. Yesterday, the presenter from TD Bank, Martin Melaccio, noted that banks have, and especially TD, have been moving much more to technology. And that may also account for some of the decrease in employment, because at least some of the jobs are being converted to technology. And he was talking about that things will be increasing in terms of what you can do in an ATM. And there'll be more services that you'll be able to do in an ATM than ever before. So that might contribute to it.
Yeah, I should add probably here that that is a very long-term secular trend in finance. So it was really interesting to me that we've actually made back all of the jobs and then some statewide, because it's
Yeah,
not what we expected to see.
Yeah.
No, statewide we have done, but statewide is up to August, where the data we have here up to March.
Got
But
it.
yeah, fintech, like Barbara is saying, fintech is going to take over and automate a lot of the positions. But just to add to Barbara's very good point is, we have looked at employment in terms of retail, because the idea was that in retail going to take a lot of jobs from individuals, and we don't see that. What we're seeing is that automation is working in conjunction with people. But that is, so I could see what you were saying, Barbara, about the fintech taking over.
Thanks. I just wanted to reflect on something that was said yesterday for those who weren't part of it. Next, we're going to hear from Dr. Denise Rodgers, who is Vice Chancellor at Rutgers University and at Rutgers Biomedical Health and Health Sciences. And Dr. Rodgers has been a frequent presenter here. I attribute that to the quality of her information, and I always find it a pleasure to listen to her. Dr. Rodgers.
Thanks, Barbara, and thanks for inviting me. I'm now going to hope that the technology works as I try to share my screen. And so I was actually asked to talk about social determinants of health and income disparity. And with the limited time that I have in this very important conference, I decided not to talk about that, but rather to take this opportunity to talk about some of the public health issues that still exist with us and that may be on the horizon that could impact employers and, quite frankly, the economic outlook in the state. I also will tell you my take-home message before I even get started. And you're going to hear me say this way too much, but I really want to hone this in, which is vaccines are safe, vaccines are effective, and I encourage all of you to get appropriate vaccines and to encourage your employees and their families to get vaccinated as well. Now, why in part? So we are predicting that we're going to have very high rates of influenza this winter. All of the reporting kind of says that based on what happened in the Southern Hemisphere, Australia and the like, they had very high rates of influenza, and it particularly affected children, I will add, in the Southern Hemisphere. And often what happens there translates into what happens here in our winter. Complicating flu season, obviously, for us, is the continued existence of COVID. But I want to stick with flu for a minute and remind us that on average, about 38,000 people die from influenza every year. And we can help to reduce and mitigate some of these deaths by getting people vaccinated. I will say that disproportionately, actually, more children die from influenza than die from COVID, for example, young children. And so to make that point, I'm showing you the data that clearly shows that if we vaccinate children, we can reduce pediatric deaths from influenza. I also want to remind you of, quite frankly, as a physician, the hardest thing I have trying to convince people is that you cannot get the flu from a flu shot. And everyone I run into has a relative or a personal story where they say, oh, I got that flu shot and I got so sick and I got the flu. You do not get the flu from a flu shot. Now, what's interesting is you can get some side effects. So you can get some aches and low-grade fever that lasts a few days. And we learned that similar side effects can occur with the COVID vaccine, but the flu shot will not give you the flu. So I'm putting up some posters in my slide deck, and my understanding is you're going to get my slide deck at the end of this presentation. I encourage you to put these up in your workplace. We want to encourage people, if they have cold-like or flu-like symptoms, first of all, if at all possible, we want to encourage them not to come to work. If they have to come to work, we want to encourage them to wear a mask. We need people to wash their hands frequently, and particularly before eating, and obviously get a flu vaccine. The interesting thing about flu actually is more contagious by touching surfaces than is COVID. So we didn't pay as much attention about the need to make sure surfaces were clean with COVID as we now need to do once flu emerges and rears its ugly head. I show this poster again, hoping you will get this and put this up in your workplace, because the other thing to remember is with both flu and COVID, we now have antiviral medications that can reduce the extent to which people get sick and die from these diseases. So I'm going to pivot to COVID for a minute. And this is, for those of you who read the New York Times, this is in the New York Times every day. This is the data from October 11th that basically shows us that we have a reduced number of COVID cases in this country. I have to say, along with some of my colleagues, I was a bit appalled when President Biden said on 60 Minutes a few weeks ago that COVID is over. It is not. I mentioned a moment ago that we have on average about 38,000 deaths from influenza. We are on track to have upwards of 145,000 deaths from COVID. COVID will probably be the third or fourth cause of death in the United States. We're still averaging close to 400 people a day dying from COVID. What this data clearly shows us is that people who are unvaccinated are 3 times more likely to get COVID, and people who are unvaccinated rather, are 6 times more likely to die. Now, I want to, though, be very, very careful when we talk about case numbers and really emphasize to all of you that these case numbers, these average daily cases, are incredibly inaccurate and lowballed. And the reason we know that, and the reason many of you know that, is you've had COVID. You take your home test. You then follow all the directions, but you don't need to get hospitalized, thank goodness. And most of you obviously didn't have any worse outcome than that. And so there's no way we get your numbers into the system. And so if you talk to your friends and neighbors, you will find that COVID is still out here. And we need to therefore take some precautions. Now, do we need to do anything like the shutdowns that we did in the early days of the pandemic? Of course not, because so many of people have been vaccinated. But we're still lagging in boosters. And so of all ages, only 39%, this is for New Jersey, this is New Jersey data, only 39% of people who are eligible for boosters have gotten their boosters. I cannot stress enough the importance of getting these boosters, because we know that over time, the effectiveness of the COVID vaccine will decline. The other thing that I also want to remind us all in terms of COVID is that it is not just like the flu, as many people would like to believe, because one of the major issues with COVID is this issue of long COVID. It looks like about 1 in 20 people who get COVID are at risk for long COVID. It looks like those who are vaccinated have a somewhat lower risk of getting long COVID. It certainly doesn't prevent you from getting long COVID, but it does lower the risk. And long COVID, for a subset of people, it's estimated that up to 1 million people in the United States have long COVID and are debilitated to the point where they are either completely unable to work or have to do significantly reduced work activities. And so again, keep in mind that these infectious diseases, if you can, if your employees can work from home, you want to say to people, if you've got cold-like, flu-like symptoms, do a couple of things. 1, work from home if at all possible. 2, do a COVID test, because that will help us to differentiate whether you have influenza versus COVID. And that changes a little bit the protocol for when people come back, because when people come back after having had COVID, you want them to wear a mask in the workplace for a full 10 days after they have been infected, after they first tested positive, because a subset of people remain contagious after that 5-day period that CDC recommends. I'm talking about monkeypox here largely because it was in the news quite a bit over the summer. I just read an article this morning in the New York Times. Monkeypox cases have drastically decreased in the United States, in part because we finally started getting the public health messaging right. Monkeypox continues to be a disease that, by and large, impacts men who have sex with men, gay men, and bisexual men, and effective outreach to those communities has really helped to decrease the case rate. There were probably 727 cases of monkeypox in the state of New Jersey throughout the course of the disease. This is what monkeypox case numbers look like for New Jersey. So as you can see, 5, 7 cases in the last few weeks. There have been no deaths, thank goodness, from monkeypox. 90% of cases of monkeypox are in a relatively young population, those 18 to 50. That means, though, that in those rare cases that occur, it's in a working population by and large as well. But the good news is monkeypox seems to be fading away, and we're not seeing very many cases anymore. So I always like having a good news public health story. We also saw a few months ago that there was evidence of polio in the water supply in New York. I will tell you that as of the beginning of this month, there have been no cases of polio detected in New Jersey, thank goodness. But talking about polio gives me an opportunity to talk about the importance of making sure that the children of your employees, your own children, get fully vaccinated. These childhood vaccines, again, are incredibly safe. There has been for years craziness out there that vaccines, particularly MMR, are somehow associated with autism. That has been disproven with multiple rigorous, scientifically validated studies. And the extent to which we make sure children are vaccinated against things like polio, measles, mumps, rubella, diphtheria, that sort of thing will make all of us safer over the long run. And the last public health issue that I want to talk about this morning is actually the issue of mental health. Because one of the things we actually are in the midst of is a crisis in mental health for people throughout this country. Some of it was precipitated by the pandemic. We saw a 41% increase in people with anxiety and depression during the pandemic, and some of that has lingered as we have gone into more of a steady state. Again, the pandemic is not over, but we continue to have fairly high rates of anxiety and depression. And we have significantly higher rates of drug overdose deaths. In 2021, for the first time in this country, 100,000 people died from drug overdose in the United States. It is critically important that we attend to the mental health of people in our workplace. And so I have also included in my slides a very useful document from the from the Centers for Disease Control that really talks about what employers can do in the workplace to help facilitate better mental health. And so on that note, I will stop sharing my slides, and thank you again for inviting me and for the time.
Thank you, Dr. Rodgers. That was a really important public health message. And I hope that all of you who have an employee base will share that. If you are an employee I hope you will be able to share that with your employer to distribute to others within your organization. I just want to make a note that in terms of the topic that we had asked Dr. Rodgers to present on, I think that the public health message really ties into reaching the people who are the most vulnerable in our society and the ones that have the comorbidities and are more vulnerable to these diseases. It's particularly important that we share it with the organizations that can reach the entire population, everyone in our communities. With that, I want to move on to our next speaker. Frank Melaccio is VP of Finance and Treasury at Horizon Blue Cross and Blue Shield, New Jersey. Turn it over to Frank.
Thank you, Barbara. Just going to get my screen sharing here. All right. So thank you again for inviting me here today. I'd like to talk about some healthcare trends that we're seeing. A lot of the numbers I will discuss today are going to be national, but New Jersey is very much following the national trend, and so they very much apply to our area. So just the one theme, and it's actually today's a perfect day because the CPI numbers were just released, but healthcare expenditures have been outpacing CPI for a number of years. In 2020, we saw a significant jump in healthcare expenditures that was due to the COVID crisis and some of the emergency measures, but generally, it's still been outpacing CPI. For 2022 and the end of 21, we don't have data here yet from CMS, but we've actually seen the CPI numbers actually outpacing healthcare for the first time. So the healthcare services has been on somewhat of a lag. That's certainly not great news from an inflation perspective, but it's nice to see that healthcare expenditures are not outpacing CPI. Unfortunately, though, there's a little bit of a tail here, and so one of the issues that we have to worry about is, will this now lead to continued healthcare inflation? Will we see those numbers go above 8% to match the headline CPI number? So today, we saw that CPI came in higher than anticipated, about 8.2%, and the core number about 6.6%. So slightly higher. So we're still having this higher CPI. And so this is flowing through the economy in a number of ways. And one of the biggest issues that we're seeing, at least in the healthcare side, is in labor. And so one of the challenges is the nursing shortage that's going on in the country today. And so there's oftentimes a wage disparity between traveling nurses and hospital nurses, or those in a clinical setting in a facility. And so that's created an enormous demand for nursing talent and a wage issue for a lot of large hospital systems that we're hearing. On an S&P healthcare call yesterday, and they spoke about this issue, and this is the COVID crisis, which was at the heart in 2020, but we're still living with, as we just heard. A lot of the challenges associated with COVID took a significant toll on healthcare workers, particularly nurses, and so a number of nurses left the field as a result. And so we continue to have this issue, and it's creating inflationary challenges that are starting to now bubble up in healthcare, where we have seen them in other parts of other industries. We are having some issues. So I'm hearing my audio is a little off here, so I'm going to actually see if I can switch to my headset, if that might make my video better. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, hopefully this is better. Okay, sorry about that. So if we go to the next slide here, let's talk about where the healthcare dollar went. So this is national data. So as you'd expect, most of the health dollars are going to either physician or clinical services or hospital care. But one of the things that you notice here, prescription drugs is about 8% of the healthcare spend. This is the fastest growing area that we've seen with healthcare expenditures and prescription drugs, particularly because the amount of prescription drugs coming online, but also the types of therapies that are coming on. We're seeing a number of gene therapies that are coming online. They require infusion as opposed to they're no longer pills. We have chronic care conditions, obviously, that are managed through regular prescription regimes. And so this is going to be an increasing cost for healthcare going forward, which is why there has been an intense focus on pharmaceutical costs in the current administration. And I think that will continue to grow pressure over time to help manage the cost of prescription drugs, particularly in the United States. And so when you kind of put all this spending together, you're seeing that the majority of the healthcare dollar is actually going out into the system. When you look at the other bucket there, that other bucket includes medical supplies and other types of care. The amount of the healthcare dollar that actually goes to CMS, government administration, insurance costs is about 8% of the total healthcare dollar across the spectrum. And so when we're thinking about healthcare costs, particularly for employers, and many employers in the state here use self-insurance plans, it's important to note that the cost of that healthcare is kind of going out throughout the system. And as we have labor issues that continue to bubble up, new therapies that come online, and also this is something we've seen across the country, is that because individuals did not get preventative care during the height of the COVID crisis, we've seen higher acuity in patients that are coming in as well. I'm hearing that from a number of providers that I know. And so that's really creating a toll on the system and impacting costs as well. One of the bright spots that you might see is that the individual healthcare expense out of pocket continues to fall. So this is probably the one good news. So while the cost of healthcare is going up, the individual that's obtaining healthcare is paying less and less. I think one of the lessons learned, in the Federal Reserve Bank in New York had some good studies on health insurance and doing its job to prevent people from going into bankruptcy as a result of healthcare expenses and make sure they get access to care, is that we're doing a better job as an industry as well as a country in doing that. And the Affordable Care Act has made a lot of strides in getting us to that end, particularly around limiting the maximum out-of-pocket expense that an individual can have. And so a lot of these policies and regulatory changes that were made and getting people to have better access to healthcare and subsidies has really resulted in lower out-of-pocket costs as a percentage of the healthcare expenditure. So more and more are being picked up either by health insurers, governments, or employers. So that's certainly a welcome change, I'm sure, for everyone on the call. In terms of what's going on in business and healthcare, and as we heard from Nicole and the Department of Labor, healthcare is very important to the New Jersey economy. There was a lot of pickup in deal activity. This is data from PwC. You'll see here that it's slowed recently as kind of inflation's picked up. Market valuations have cooled. We continue to see the amount of mergers and acquisitions in the healthcare space going down. They probably peaked a couple of years ago. They will most likely pick up once the stock market revalues a little bit and economic conditions normalize. There's a lot of opportunity in healthcare to create better connections, reduce overall cost of care. Many companies are looking at vertical integrations throughout the healthcare spectrum. And so this is probably something that will pick up in some time, but obviously slowing due to the broader economic stress that we're seeing. And then finally, how are we doing, as a healthcare industry? We have obviously a number of healthcare companies here in New Jersey. How are their stocks performing? How are they being received? Well, the good news is that healthcare is generally a defensive industry because everybody needs healthcare, and so the revenues associated with healthcare is somewhat less impacted by recessions, and so investors tend to flock to healthcare in times of recessionary concerns as defensive stocks. And we've seen this year to date, the S&P Healthcare Index is actually outperforming the S&P. Obviously, values are still down, but many of the healthcare companies are doing better than other companies at this point in time. So I think that has a good impact on our local economy here. The fact that we have somewhat resiliency in some of the industries that are based here in New Jersey, and hopefully we don't have a recession. But it seems like more and more bad news is coming up. But to the extent that we do have one, hopefully it's mild. But healthcare will have to continue to serve its patients and members going forward, and so that it will obviously create cost strains and revenue strains for a number of companies as they address this. So thank you for your time this morning. Appreciate it, Barbara, and I'll hand it back off to you. Barbara, I think you're on mute. Sorry.
Sorry, I would say thank you very much. I thought I had clicked on the button. That was very informative. We really appreciate it. Very helpful to know that those facts about healthcare. I'm now pleased to move on to Terry Moran, who is Senior Director of Energy Supply. Excuse me, I had the timer on. Senior Director of Energy Supply at PSEG. Terry, it's all yours.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Next slide. Hopefully you can see it okay. So the subject where I'd like to kind of cover today is really just to kind of provide an update on energy supply and energy markets. So it's going to be a kind of a message of increased pricing, which shouldn't be a surprise. All of us see what's happening at the pumps in terms of energy pricing. And the focus is going to be on the supply side of your bill. So on your utility bill, if you're not aware, there's a delivery component, which is the cost or the price, the cost associated with the pipes and the wires getting the supply to you. And then there's the supply side of the bill, which is the actual commodity itself, natural gas or electricity. So we're going to be talking about the supply side. I'll talk a little bit about the trends, where the pricing is, where it looks like it's going, and talk a little bit about the choices you have in terms of supply. And just one note is this is an area the utility does not make money on. This is a pass-through for utilities. It's just something important to note. So I'll start with natural gas, and what this chart shows is that natural gas in around 2020, the natural gas market was at an all-time low. I mean, it was a low since the 90s, where the price of gas came down. And you can see since the 2020 timeframe, the price of natural gas is historically was sourced in the southeast, in the production area in the Gulf. And over the last bunch of years, a lot of the supply has come more from the shale region in Pennsylvania, Ohio. But the price of natural gas has increased, as you can see here, pretty significantly. And right now, natural gas is traded on the NYMEX, and it's trading in the $6-7 range in this coming winter. And it did really spike up. So it's been very volatile. So it goes up and down considerably. And like all commodities, it's driven by supply and demand. And so I thought what I would do is just kind of give you some sense of what is causing the market to increase and act as it is. And on the demand side, one factor is always weather. And what I'm going to be talking about here, these are the reasons why it's increasing, and there's also supply issues that are causing it to also increase. So these are kind of going in opposite directions. But in terms of weather, we came from a very cold winter last winter that drew down on storage. But what it also did was it was a very hot summer. Getting some feedback. It was a very hot summer in the southeast, and what I'll talk about in a second is there's a considerable amount of electric generation that is fired by natural gas, right? Natural gas generation. So that's a big consumer of natural gas. So in the summertime, when normally gas is stored in storage fields for use in the winter, a lot of that gas in the summer was redirected to support electric generation. What's the consequence of that is that, number one, you have a high demand, but you can't also store as much gas for storage. So the demand continued to be high through the summer because largely due to electric generation fueled by natural gas. Another factor is something we see on the news all the time, is that due to issues in Europe and really on the global stage, there's a larger LNG, liquefied natural gas, export demand. And so that demand leaving the United States, going to Europe, decreases the supply, but it also is an increase in demand. So that's a driver. Then on the supply side, as I said, because of the weather and the use of natural gas for generation, storage right now is at a low in the 5-year average, even compared to last year. There's also a lack of and less new pipeline projects, and some of that is driven by challenge from government to get new pipelines put in the ground to help support the peak day of utilities and of customers. And there's also been, from a production perspective, there are companies actually that are out there that drill for natural gas. The production has increased, but even at these prices, perhaps it's somewhat tempered by some of the challenges to get gas away from the production area. That also impacts the supply of natural gas. So with this, customers are, you're seeing these high prices right now in natural gas, and it is translating now into prices for customers. So in terms of for you or your business, you have an option to, when natural gas deregulated a good time ago, you have the option to get your gas supply from a third party. In New Jersey, they're referred to as third-party suppliers. And the pricing that you will pay is really going to be dictated by the terms of your agreement. So, but the increase in natural gas is seen throughout the industry, and clearly here in the Northeast. Residential customers for PSEG recently, our price has gone up by 24%. That's the overall bill increase effective October 1, and that reflects these prices. Now, one positive is that we have a program where we hedge supply that has been able to help temper that increase, but nonetheless, we are purchasing gas in this same gas environment, which is causing our prices to go up for customers. As I said earlier, this is a pass-through for PSEG. We work very hard to try to keep the costs down, and that's evidenced even right now. We have the lowest bill in the state, but nonetheless, customers are still seeing, and myself included, seeing this increase in your residential bill. On the commercial side, if you're a commercial or industrial customer, your price from PSEG is a monthly price, and it's set at the market price. So that price, obviously, even you saw based on that previous chart, has been increasing. When you compare it to last year, the amount that it's increased compared to last year, it changes month to month because the market has been very volatile. So there's a lot of ups and downs. So if you're looking at this, you do have the ability, you should see a reference on your bill for something called the price to compare. Residential customers can see what PSEG's bill charges are, and you can use that to compare to a third party. And on our website, we have all of our prices listed that we charge every month that give you an opportunity to compare. So there are options that are out there for you on natural gas. The overall message is due to some of those challenges, the price is increasing. And so I want to just also then talk about, well, how does that relate to electricity? So I mentioned that there is a large amount of natural gas as the source for electric generation. So over here on the left is a table that shows, this is a kind of point in time in the PJM power pool. So the Pennsylvania, Jersey, Maryland power pool, it started out as only those 3 states. This is a power pool for all of this territory here that's shaded. that is a transmission, it's an organization that manages the transmission system in all of this region, but it also enables an energy market for suppliers in that region. And you can see here, based on, I just took this from a couple of days ago, you can see in blue that, that a considerable amount of the supply portfolio across PJM is natural gas. Another big aspect is nuclear, which is a very good base load carbon-free source of power. Coal has been diminishing, but there still is coal across it, and then some other renewables you can see. So renewables have a lesser extent, but so when natural gas has a large extent, a large amount of it, and the power, the markets are, so because they have to run natural gas, they're in the same market as you are for your business. So that increases the cost of power. What you can see here, this is showing what I've circled here, a point in time, year-over-year price increase. So this was just a point in time, and again, this is extremely volatile as well. So the price of electricity is increasing. That's really the moral of the story, because it's driven largely by the price of natural gas. They follow each other. Now, similar to what I mentioned with natural gas in terms of options, you do have an option as a customer in terms of how you supply or procure your natural gas. You can procure it from a third-party supplier. These are entities that are out there. They're licensed by the state to operate just like the ones for natural gas. Terms of your deal would be based on the deal you strike with suppliers, and you can go on to on our website or the BPU's website, have lists of these entities that are licensed and out there. The utilities are all obligated to procure what is referred to as default service. So what on the natural gas side, I referred to a couple of seconds ago, it's referred to as basic gas supply service. On the electric side, it's referred to as basic generation service. So this is the service that we provide or procure for customers who elect not to have their service supplied by a third party. And PSEG and all the state's utilities secure their electric requirements through an auction, and the auction happens every year. There are two separate auctions that occur, and they'll happen really at the end in February timeframe. The first is for the largest customers. These are customers that receive really high levels of very large customers. For the majority of customers, they receive, and their price is based on capacity with energy as a pass-through. The most customers are in what's called residential small commercial pricing. The benefit of this structure is it's referred to as laddered. So this year, we're only going to be procuring a third of the load. So only a third of the load will be in this newer price environment. So there should be less of an effect on the overall impact of these costs that we're seeing in the market. But again, there is a price to compare. You can see on your bill to compare and see where you stand price-wise. So the moral of the story is the price, like a lot of other energy sources, the prices are increasing in the market. There are actions customers can take. There is on our website, there's information about financial assistance programs for those who qualify. But there's also programs and tools that are available for you to also reduce your energy use. And that's where I'd like to hand it off to an associate, a colleague of mine, Waltasia, who will walk you through what's available in terms of energy efficiency.
I'll
Take a
turn
look.
to, I'm going to turn to Waltasia now.
Thank you, Barbara. Is everyone able to hear me okay? All right, I'll go ahead and share. You're able to see my slides at this point. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Waltasia Mansano, manager of the PSEG Clean Energy Jobs Program, and I'm going to give you an overview of our energy efficiency programs that help
Waltasia, excuse me, can you blow up the slide because we're only seeing a very small version of it? We're able to do that? Because if not, we'll have Maya run it.
1 second. Let me do I'll stop the share. I had it maximized. I'm not sure why it's not showing. 1 second. Is that better, Barbara?
No. Maybe go up to here, this button. up here?
It should be maximized. I have it on, maybe I'll stop share again. All right, one more time.
Here we go.
Okay.
Yes,
Waltasia, this is I'll run it for you. It's showing very narrow and small, but I can just run it for you.
No problem. Thank you. So I already did introductions about how I'm going to present the residential and commercial and industrial businesses, all those different consumers that we have for PSEG will save money. So I think, Terry did a good job of teeing off the macro, and I'll give you some cost saving measures that the company's taking to help our consumer base. Next slide. This slide is required for me to cover to say this presentation contains forward-looking statements that are based on management's assumptions and subject to risk and uncertainties, including but not limited to those bullets in this slide, which could cause actual results to differ from what's anticipated. Next slide. So PSEG's Clean Energy Future initiatives reflect what the company calls our vision of powering progress, which is to help our customers, both business and residential customers, use less energy, ensure the energy that we use is cleaner, and deliver energy more reliably than ever. It includes investments in energy efficiency, electric vehicles, and smart meters, and energy storage designed to elevate New Jersey's economic and environmental sustainability policies to a new level. We believe expanding energy efficiency is crucial to combating climate change, and PSEG has tailored programs to the needs of all customers, residential and businesses, that will reduce greenhouse gases and deliver $1 billion in customer savings. I'd also like to mention, because of the program I run, which falls under the energy efficiency programs, the PSEG Clean Energy Jobs Program primary objective is to provide economic opportunities to 2,000 individuals throughout the state, specifically in PSEG service territory, with a focus on low and middle income communities and building up our labor force to be able to serve in jobs in clean energy. Next slide. So there are easy, cost-effective ways for homeowners to reduce their energy use, and PSEG's energy efficiency program offers financial incentives to help. Through our program, homeowners can get expert advice on how to manage their energy use and earn rebates on Energy Star certified appliances, lighting, recycled appliances, and energy-saving home upgrades. Next slide. So on a residential side of the house, pun intended, we have 5 programs for residential customers. The Quick Home Energy Checkup offers residential customers expert advice and energy efficient upgrades at no additional cost. We have a home energy savings program that assists residential customers in finding rebates, discounts, and other energy saving options. We also have an appliance recycling program that's available to customers, which helps get rebates and free pickup for certain older appliances you might have in your home that require disposal. We have a home weatherization program that provides a no-cost home energy inspection designed to identify potential efficiency upgrades. And finally, there's an Energy Star program. So I'm sure you've seen those yellow tags if you walk into any Home Depot or Lowe's, that they're designed to provide a whole home approach to energy efficiency products that can help customers realize significant cost savings and energy efficiency. And to ensure universal access to energy efficiency, income qualified customers can apply for free energy audits and energy enhancing upgrades at no cost. Tenants can also take advantage of our programs, and we have specific programs for multifamily building owners as well. So in addition to these programs, we are executing an electric vehicle initiative that we believe will help customers with the cost of installing residential charging equipment, electric vehicle chargers at multifamily buildings, government facilities, and at parking lots, as well as fast charging infrastructure at high traffic corridors, which many of you New Jersey residents should know well, like the Turnpike and the Garden State Parkway. Next slide. So with regard to our commercial and industrial programs, our energy efficiency programs offer PSEG customers the opportunity to reduce energy use, help the environment, and save money. We offer a suite of solutions that include rebates for HVAC, lighting, and certain appliances. Our goal is to help our business customers increase productivity, decrease energy consumption, and realize long-term cost savings. We have prescriptive offers, and our business user programs can be customized based on business needs, and for small business customers, we have a program called Direct Install, which provides significant incentives with low installation costs to minimize customers' out-of-pocket costs. Next slide, please. Additionally, our services include energy management, an energy management program that provides organizational tools and systems to help drive energy performance improvements. So we take a real analytical approach to helping our C&I customers save money. We've also have engineered solutions that are whole building engineered energy savings for hospitals, school districts, universities, municipalities, and apartment buildings. Savings becomes easy if you follow these programs that we have with financial incentives that are also tied to them for energy efficient equipment and solutions that we have with no cost and no interest on bill repayment, which many of our small businesses find to be hugely advantageous to them as they're starting up, and perhaps starting more slowly in the beginning. Next slide. So I've listed here a number of different websites that could help you to obtain more information, but in particular, I'd like to point out two. So to learn more about our commercial and industrial energy efficiency programs, please visit thebizsave.pseg.com. And for more information on our residential programs, you can go to homeenergy.pseg.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Waltasia. That was really, really informative. And I'm already making note of some tips that I would like to use myself. So appreciate it. It's
Great,
now my
Abby.
pleasure. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to turn to our next speaker. Professor Lal is Director of the Clean Energy and Sustainability Analytics Center at Montclair State University. Dr. Lal.
Thank you, Barbara. So let me try my hand again. It's hearing that. So can you see my screen, or Maya, do you need to say?
You're all set. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Barbara. I'll be talking about climate change and impact on the economy. So New Jersey, Barbara gave me New Jersey and Newark. So I tried my best to get something on Newark because this is a growing area. So the next one is I'll talk about some of the things like Clean Energy and Sustainability Analytics Center. I'm speaking first time here, so I thought I'll just very briefly say what we do. We have been around for 5 years, and we do clean energy sustainability research, partnership, and technical assistance to both public and private sectors. The overview that I'll be talking about, I'll be introducing very briefly the climate change in New Jersey in terms of the economic lens, the economic impacts, focusing mostly on New Jersey and Newark, and then adaptive responses. Not everything is going bad. There are things happening which are good. So I wanted to take an optimistic lens as well. And then also from the environmental, social, and governance initiatives, like how businesses and others are responding, and how climate finance, which is the broader work, like what international, national, as well as local level, what is happening. So very briefly, I'll touch on those. First of all, I'll say that National Climate Assessment, that was 2019 when it came up, it set the stage, and I was glad to be involved in that. And 2023, we'll come out with another report, which is mandated by the national government. So it's a federal law requirement that every 4 years we have to come out with that. So giving the perspective, I just like that part, picking like time. The left side one is like 2006 and the right side cover is last year. So just to think about, we have been talking about the same issues for some time. Like the 2006 one talked about be very worried, and then again, like we are on fire. So it's like a DEFCON when we say, so we are moving from DEFCON 1, 2, 3, and I don't know, I'll not say DEFCON 5, but people are talking about that. So there is a lot of talk about being a climate alarmist, but being in a university, we see the discourse is happening, and even now industries and others are paying attention. In terms of New Jersey, one thing that is very clear that New Jersey is warming faster than rest of the Northeast, as well as the world. So this is like, we are not in a good place if you look at global perspective or even a national perspective. And some of the reports that came out very recently, like the state came out with a report, Rutgers came out with a report, a lot of things, but what is consistent across that we are on a much faster path to warm, like in New Jersey, if you think about that, and average annual temperature is increasing much faster, and it is slated to be as high as 4 to 6 degree Fahrenheit, 5.7 degree by 2050, where you stand in terms of the climate modeling. And the other part is we have been observing increase of this in terms of sea level rise. It's not just alarmist view, but there is the experiential view in terms of like what is really happening. And we can see that it has been happening, and it has been measured that 0.2 inches per year, which is quite a lot in terms of, like if in my next slides, in terms of when we talk about economic impact, this is quite a lot. The other part that we are is heat waves are expected to impact larger areas with more frequency and longer duration. This is again puts us in an odd place because New Jersey and Northern Jersey and Newark in particular, its built up area is huge. So we'll talk about the heat island impact, but it results in that summer heat related mortalities, also the electricity. I'm following PSEG, so it's a very good buildup that the price is increasing, but also the consumption increases in times of these, like when temperature increases. And the other part is size and frequency of floods will increase as annual precipitation increases, not just from the sea side, but also from the river side and also CSOs and others. So these are some of the things I'll talk about. And the tropical storms, like we saw recently in Florida and last year in Ida, like that was one of the storms where we had huge mortalities. If you look across New Jersey, like generally we don't have 30 deaths after a storm. Like we think we have adapted well to these storms, we respond well, but last year was one of the anomalies. So that is what we'll talk about. In terms of the economic impact that setting up, now we are increasing. So the state came out with a report where they said that by 2 feet by 2050, even a 1.5 feet increase, like even if you take a conservative view, it has implication for vulnerable communities along the coast. Not just that, oh, it will increase, but the other part is that the sea level rise will have real impacts in terms of dollars. If we put in terms of New Jersey, it can range from 1.3 to $3 billion in terms of just coastal flooding. And when the real estate market or the property value will decrease by 4.5 billion and around 660 million per year in losses just for Hudson and Bergen counties alone. Like, so these are some of the numbers which talk about. The other part that I wanted to say, like climate change increases inequality. Barbara talked about equity lens and others, and we all are, but this is one of the place where rubber hits the road in terms of who is impacted most, because it disproportionately impacts the poorest of us all. And in terms of they lose more of their wealth, they can't adapt, and they are susceptible to damages because of their proximity to some of the areas where there is a higher chance of economic loss or even life losses. And Newark falls under one of that area, that sea level rise, surface water, and because 95% of Newark is built up in one way or the other. So it has also inward flooding. And again, I talked about tropical cyclone, Ida anyway, like this was one of the places where 30 deaths took place last year, which again talks to the inequality and who is impacted more, who can respond and adapt better. taking a lens, closure lens to Newark, that is 26% of Newark below poverty level. When extreme events occur, residents suffer. And on the right side, it's just a picture that was taken by Ironbound, like community coalition. It's on their website that you can see where water crept in. Like most of the places that you can identify in terms of the street and others, they were underwater. And it was not just the residential areas were flooded and then it will recede, but also Superfund sites and others which have higher environmental impact or long-term environmental impacts were there. We saw that the infrastructure failed, not just in Newark or Northern Jersey. Hoboken was a prime example of that. And another is limited resources for recovery. And recovery comes in, but it's much more gradual. So the idea is like you cannot put your life back in order. It's not like a typical rain that it will go down, but it changes the generations in terms of like the impact can linger on. The other part of climate change, what's happening is like, it has a very high impact in terms of urban heat island effect. I'll not go into detail what we go, but I try to simplify that it simply means that there's a higher temperature, difference in temperature for particular. So it's a localized impact. Build up areas, they have higher absorption, so higher temperature. And what does it mean in terms of higher temperature? A lot of health impact. Like we had the idea of dehydration, heat exhaustion, respiratory difficulties has been there, but in the national level, just to put that in the context, it's the second worst urban heat island effect in the nation. So it is at the forefront of heat island impacts. And also the other side is increased prices of electricity during peak supply time. We follow peak pricing pact, and PSEG knows much better on that front, that how peak prices, when everybody is consuming, that the prices go up. Again, inequality, that those who can afford can pay, or there are other sources that can come in. I'll not go into the electricity pricing here, but just to make a case that the consumption goes up, the prices goes up both at the same time. And it puts a lot of pressure on the grid. In terms of transportation, we have a transportation sector which has been calling for a lot of investments before climate change or others. That has been there in New Jersey. Bridges and tunnels are already considered deficient. And if you can think about 3 to 5 foot, 3 foot flooding increase every 5 years, we have to adapt sooner. We have to put infrastructure in place. Transportation infrastructure, our tunnels, our CSOs and others, like the cost is huge. It was like in 2014, 8 billion. I'm sure it will be very high, means higher than 8 billion now, but there are significant implications for interruption in supply chain. Why do we need transportation resiliency? Because you need to respond, and also it's much longer response to bring back the community, businesses, and everybody involved in that. It also impacts tourism. Climate change means we think that Southern Jersey is at the cusp of that, but Northern Jersey also has feeder effects in terms of community like Newark and others, in terms of tourism impacts, like what we saw, like in terms of COVID, when a lot of people are not going in the beaches, then economy is interconnected. New Jersey economy is interconnected. So if in one part of New Jersey, if it faces the impact, the other part might be indirectly impacted, or distributional wealth transfers take place locally. So this is what I'll say, like in terms of beach replenishment, 6 billion from 2010 to 2050, which has to come from the coffers of state, national, as well as the private and the community part. So we are talking about larger investment responding to that. And just putting this number, just 1% decrease in tourism result in economic impact on the state of around 3.7 billion and loss of 40,000 jobs. That is the study which talked about 15 years back. I could not find any new study on that, but I'm sure like we can extrapolate that study that it will be much higher, just to put that in context. I gave you the problem, like what is happening. Climate change is happening, businesses are being impacted, communities are being impacted, but what are we doing in terms of that? The other part is like adaptive responses. That nature-based solution is one part of it, but we have to understand that this mitigates the problem. This does not take away, like, oh, we can solve by putting nature-based solutions like green roofs and others everywhere and the problem will go away. No, the problem will still remain, but it will mitigate. It will not be as high as it is right now. So a lot of efforts are happening across Northern New Jersey as well as New Jersey in terms of like implementing living shorelines, buffers, wetlands, dunes. So good things are happening. It's not everything is downhill, but we need to do more. The other part is like climate change. There are alliances coming up, which a lot of businesses and others are involved, but these are things to celebrate, like are happening, like in terms of Resilient Northeastern Jersey, which is a coalition which is very active. Even Ironbound and other coalitions are coming up, and Newark Sustainability Action Plans from the Office of Sustainability Newark, like we work with them quite a bit. So these are some of the things. So good things are happening, but we have to understand that nearly 95% of Newark is impervious. So it will see frequent flooding. Means it cannot be that, yes, it will go away if we invest money, even the amount that we were talking about, it will not go away. So we have to learn to live with it, but also to adapt better. The other part that New Jersey is doing quite a bit is in terms of climate change is clean energy. We are greening the grid in a big way. Our sources of, and PSEG and other energy partners are part of it. Like one of the things that we are talking about, we have one of the steepest targets in terms of clean energy by 2050. So the governor also revised that the target that by 2030, we have to decarbonize 50%. So these are some of the things that are happening, but also statewide economic benefits in terms of, and 300,000 jobs can come up by changing what we are saying, the large scale decarbonization. And the idea here is like, yes, it can be done, but the responses has to be at different scales, different levels. And one of the ways the corporates and companies are investing is ESG investments have gone up. Like these are not just financial factors, not just looking at the bottom line, but some of the non-financial factors in terms of what we are doing in the environment, scope 1, 2 emissions, like along the value chain, what are we doing to reduce or decarbonize our business? On the social side, like how are we more diverse, equitable, and others, and what is the governance sector, like what is the overall impact? So the idea is like this is one of the things that have come up quite a bit, and it is a thing to celebrate. Again, like it is a market-based solution that people are thinking that in the business side that yes, things are happening. It's not just people like me talking from ivory tower, but real action is happening on the ground. And this is across the sectors. It is not just related to energy sustainability, but it is in a way like marrying ESG with SDG, so Sustainable Development Goals is happening, like in terms of all the three. And the idea is financial sustainability is important, but also other ESG factors are gaining quite a bit of ground. And here climate finance is a lot to contribute. And in terms of like climate finance, which I do in my daily work. So there are two types of risk. When we talk about climate change, we talk about physical risk, like sea level rise. If you live along the coast, then you are at the forefront of that, like real estate value reduction or others, because it can come underwater or insurance premium can go up. But the other side is also transition risk. Like some of the industries and others have been traditionally focused on high carbon or economy. Now they have to make a transition very quick to low carbon economy. So an example can be like, if some coal is there, why is that coal still there? Or some like, because their cost of doing business increases quite a bit based on this transition. So there are two risks, both of them in terms of like the companies face. And the idea here is climate change is lower productivity because there are unconsequential impacts which we face and lower economic growth. And at the end, this all comes down to low investment returns. Like climate change is resulting in lower investment returns. And the other part that not in my backyard does not hold true, because we have seen evidences, like it takes some time, that flood zones experience relative price decline, even if not damaged by Sandy. Even if the storm comes in and your property or our property is not impacted, still there is a price reduction. A longer duration study came out from Yale School, which talks about New York, Boston, and Chicago, and they find that the property exposed to climate experience lower price appreciation. So it's not just you see looking at a lower price, but also when the market is on an upswing, the appreciation is much lower because there are inherent risks attached to that. And we saw that after Hurricane Sandy in terms of New Jersey Climate Attention Index, which is basically what real estate and others puts in the keywords that, oh, not in flood zone, not impacted by this or others. It resulted in like people started paying attention to that. And rendered almost 20,000 homes in the state in uninhabitable or unmarketable, like in terms of which you cannot sell. The other part is, again, market as drivers of change. Like when you look at how market takes its course and then cost of option protection against extreme risk goes up, fixed income markets, the municipal bonds start getting lower return. And one of the largest trendsetter is BlackRock. Like when he writes his annual letters, then people pay attention. In 2020, a letter from the investment bank BlackRock, which is the largest investment banker, like investment conviction is that sustainability and climate integrated portfolio gives us lower returns. So why companies should pay attention? Because investors and others are paying attention. So what we started calling this year's letter came about is stakeholder capitalism. It's not that we are imposing our ideas, but he said that he reiterated that stakeholder capitalism, it's not socialism or others that a lot of 16 attorney generals of Republican states talk about, but stakeholders are looking for other things than bottom lines. And this is just like public, private, and research partnerships are the way around. I know Dr. Kim will be talking about after me. So some of the things that universities have a role to play, that is what we talk about. Like we do quite a bit in terms of not just providing workforce inputs and others, but also quite a bit of research. We work with businesses, we work with government, we work with stakeholder community coalitions and others. And some of the projects that we are involved in, I know I'm running out of time, so I'll not go into that, but we do quite a bit of that. So these slides will be uploaded. So we do all of these projects and others. And thank you for giving me this opportunity, Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was really informative. It's now my great pleasure to turn to the new president of NJIT, Dr. Lim.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, please show that one slide. Okay, it's up, right?
Yes, it's up.
Okay, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you, NRBP, for inviting me to participate in today's virtual regional economic outlook event hosted by Newark Regional Business Partnership. It's really great to be here to see everyone. As someone who attended a public polytechnic universities and who served as the president of one now at NJIT, I'm acutely aware of the massive role and influence of technology on economic development and workforce issues. I also understand the role that universities like NJIT, Rutgers, and others must play in economic development. So here are they. For institutions of higher education to serve as a catalyst of economic development, we must do several things. We must adapt to the marketplace. I call it sometimes moving at the speed of business. And we need to develop partnership, mutually beneficial partnerships that serves the needs of industry while enhancing the educational experiences of our students. You know, after all, our business, higher ed like NJIT, Rutgers, and others, our business is students. And the idea is to create mutually beneficial partnership with industry to enhance that educational experience that we can provide to our students. The other thing is NJIT embraces economic development as a core component of its mission. We produce an economic impact on the state of New Jersey that exceeds $2.8 billion annually. So we're actually a big business, if you can think about that. But you know, the most important thing I urge everyone is that we can do more together with great partnership, great alliances. I think we can do a lot more for the state of New Jersey. You know, the world that we live in today and the economy in which we work are inextricably linked to technology and technological evolution. Of course, I'm preaching to the choir here. Everyone's, I'm assuming, embrace that. You know, technology has become so pervasive. This actually was accentuated by the pandemic. Not that we wish for the pandemic because many people suffer from it, but one of the silver lining of the pandemic is that it propels, at least for the higher ed, far out into the future, much sooner than we thought in terms of the use and the adaptation of technology. So technology has become very pervasive in virtually every aspect of our lives. At NJIT, you know, we embrace it as part of our teaching, learning, research, and engagement. and it intertwined throughout all industry that drives our national and global economies, including our health care systems, energy, military, defense system, manufacturing, and on and on and on. So there's no sector that really is not impacted by technology. So at the core of every major industry or market sector is technology, because the things that drive market growth and disruption are directly attributable to technological shift that spur innovation, create new products, and improve business processes and services. We all in our lifetime have experienced that in a way that is changed our lives, the way we do business, the way we live, and the way we communicate even with our kids. You know, a while back when phone came up, I recall that, you know, my son who is upstairs was communicating with my wife downstairs through texting. And I said, wow, why can't you just walk downstairs and talk to mom? But, you know, that's a common thing today. You know, even next door, we would text to each other sometimes. So, you know, that shows the power of technology. Technology is continuously changing the way we learn, create, and communicate and do business. Across all industry sectors, companies, I believe, are seeking efficiencies or innovation, and in most cases, both as the key strategies for maximizing profit. After all, you know, most for-profit company, one part of their value to shareholders is to maximize profit. This has threatened many in our workforce whose positions or skill sets run the risk of becoming obsolete. I recall, some of you know, I just came to New Jersey. Prior to New Jersey, I was at the University of Texas at Arlington for 5 years. When I was in Texas, I was part of a task force that the state put together to understand the impact of the pandemic on education and on jobs. And what we found out, okay, is that nearly 50% of the existing workforce, at least in Texas, do not have the right skill set to continue to be efficient, to be effective in their job. Several things why that happened. One is because the job has changed. The way the nature of the job has changed. Second thing is the pandemic pushes a lot of people to either retire early or get off the job market. And these vacancies are filled by the existing employees that may or may not have the right skill set to do that particular job. So that combination, okay, created a void. And you know, I think you know that has really threatened you know, the workforce and the efficiency and the productivity, profitability of companies. So one might assume this threat to be is exclusive to manual labor. It's not. It goes from all the way from manual labor all to the professional level. So that, you know, according to, you know, there was a assumption according to the economists, okay, what determines the vulnerability to automation is not so much whether the work concern is manual or white collar, but whether or not it is routine. So this is a key, right? Routine. And what technology can bring to us, okay, is innovation that then bring transformation to how we do things differently, better, and more efficiently, more rapidly, and more precisely. So that's precisely the reason why job growth is occurring most rapidly in sectors requiring what the economists refer to as non-routine cognitive thinking. You know, we talk about automation will replace people. It will never replace people because the evolution of job and the growth is really in the non-routine cognitive thinking, which machine will have a hard time doing. I mean, we are really adapted to that human kind. So this skill set demands that the capability to problem solve, to adapt, to improvise, to think, you know, at our feet, to collaborate, and the things that, you know, higher education is designed to foster within our students. I feel that in higher ed, education is becoming so holistic. It's not just about going to a classroom and getting A's and B's, but it is really on top of that is the experiential learning, engaging the community on and off campus, and also the learning of power skills, the ability to communicate, to teach, to learn, to express their ideas, and to have empathy, which is very key. So that's why job growth in the technology cluster is booming, as much so that we are not able to meet the demands for talent. just this past fall semester, one of our highest growth colleges today is the Yingwu College of Computing. Why? Because people are seeing opportunity in the technology cluster. The Wall Street Journal also noted that the United States has about $1.3 million vacant jobs in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. These are the fields annually, and these are the fields that our college graduate, the one from NJIT, can fulfill. And so at NJIT, we play several critical roles on this front. Okay, I'm shamelessly promoting NJIT here. First, we produce the tech workforce needed throughout our state and our region. NJIT educates approximately 1/3 of our state's engineers and scientists, and it's a top 20 national university for producing African American and Hispanic engineers, because companies all want diversity. Diversity, as many of you know, bring diversity of thoughts, diversity of way of looking at things, and that actually leads to better product, better system, better processes. In fact, 62% of all engineering degrees awarded to African American and Hispanic students by New Jersey public institutions are awarded by NJIT. The success of our graduates in our most important outcome, and graduating prepared for a career in the STEM disciplines, opens up a whole world of opportunity for our students. Some of you know this, we're actually #1 in the entire nation for student upward economic mobility. That's according to a study by Forbes some years back, and we're top 100 nationally for alumni mid-career earning, and that's according to payscale.com. So you can see that we're an engine of social mobility. Second, NJIT is a research powerhouse. We are a Carnegie R1 institution, a top 140 or so research university in this country by Carnegie classification. Only 3 universities in New Jersey, including NJIT, that have earned this distinction. That's NJIT, Princeton, and Rutgers. So annually, we conduct more than $150 million in research activity, and they range from practical to applied in nature to solving real-world problems in the areas that include life sciences, healthcare, medical devices, civil infrastructure, advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, transportation, and many, many more other fields. Obviously, we also conduct basic research that are primarily funded by the National Science Foundation and other funding agencies. So all of these fields are evolving rapidly, in fact, an incredibly rapid pace. And if we work collaboratively, in my mind, we can seize upon incredible opportunities that benefit all of us. As I say, mutually beneficial partnership is what we're looking for. Many of you out there, your companies are struggling, I believe, to find employees for critical positions. And NJIT can be a tremendous resource for you in fulfilling that interest. Our graduates are highly skilled, in great demand, but you can gain early access to them through internship, through co-ops, and other practical experiences. The thing I love about internship, co-ops, and other practical experiences is 2 things. One, it feeds to student success. Those students who go on to the pathway of doing internship, co-op, and experiential learning as part of the educational program here or elsewhere has a much higher likelihood of graduating in time, and much likelihood of landing a position that they would interested in working on. And like I said, these students are incredibly talented, they're hardworking, and they're very diverse here at NJIT. So to give an example, this year's first year class, what we call first-time full-time class, is our most diverse ever in the history of NJIT. Not only it has carry a diversity, it's also has one of the most prepared most prepared group that we're bringing in. The average SAT scores is above 1300. The average high school GPA is 3.75. So we're bringing really talented students here to NJIT. NJIT also can be a resource for providing upskilling and reskilling of your current members of your workforce who need to enhance their technological facility and acumen. We have one of our product here is intellectual capacity of curriculum and materials that can be repackaged into various different forms, certificates, micro-credentialing, or just a course by itself or seminar that some of your employees will find helpful and useful in their profession in the companies as well. Additionally, we have something that some of you may or may not know about, is the New Jersey Innovation Institute and its Venture Link Incubator as well. Both of them can work with your companies to help develop new products, improve your processes through technological innovation, and partner on research into problems or challenges that may impact your business or even an entire industry sector. We have also one of the largest and most advanced makerspace in the country. Makerspace is also a resource for local businesses. This facility provides opportunity for industrial partners to collaborate on research and developmental projects, or simply send employees for customized training tailored towards their needs. I'll just mention some of the capabilities in the makerspace. We have product design and prototyping. We have industry standard computer-aided design and machining software. We have CNC machining. Additive manufacturing is very big here. Metalwork and welding, the traditional ones, and electronic design, assembly, and manufacturing. Industrial metrology, that includes measurement and verification, and many, many more. So you can see that I'm urging us to partner to create mutually beneficial partnership to help you grow and to also help the state economically and to help us be better equipped to educate the next generation workforce. And I look forward to working with all of you again to grow our regional economy. Thank you for listening, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lim. That was really, really informative. Just looking back over the 2 days, we really heard a lot of reason for optimism, as well as to understand some of the challenges before us. And just looking back to yesterday, we heard some solutions that are in play for the unequal impact on the lower income people, that there are now opportunities for home ownership and for bringing in new companies and new businesses into the state, thanks to efforts by organizations like Choose New Jersey, the Land Bank by Invest Newark, and much more. And then today we talked about some challenges, the public health issues, and working to get more people to be vaccinated, and encouraging your employees to be vaccinated, whether it's from COVID or the flu or childhood vaccinations, just being aware of cleanliness and working to protect each other. So all of that was part of what we talked about today. And then I found it intriguing to our last speaker, thinking about the phrase non-routine cognitive thinking and how that helps to be able to utilize technology. So you can teach the technology skills, but you also need to teach people how to use the technology. So I think it's an interesting interplay, and one that certainly is in the expertise of NJIT. And then just wrapping back to the climate change presentation, we really all have experienced looking at Florida, what the impacts of climate change could be. And thanks to PSEG, we heard some solutions for energy efficiency and energy savings. So I think we're a lot more informed because of all the presentations over these 2 days, including our economic report yesterday, our workforce report today, and really, really grateful to everyone for being part of the program. We're especially grateful to our sponsors, TD Bank, for being the series sponsor, and all of the sponsors that I mentioned at the start of the program. And we are also very grateful to all of you for being part of this program. And we hope that you will share future programs with people that you know and encourage them to become members of NRBP. With that, we wish you an excellent day, and thank you again for being with us.